here to help you with breeze, planting seeds and teaching skills. Teachers turn schoolyards to dreams.
Let's grow an oasis in your classroom this spring. You're listening to the School Gardens with Ease podcast. I'm your host, Leila Mireskandari, and this is the first episode of a brand new season, season 3, and overall episode number 71 of this podcast. This podcast is for you if you are someone who cares about and wants to help grow school gardens. You could be a teacher, a principal, a community garden partner for schools, a parent, a student, etc. If you've listened so far to the previous episode, you'd know that I have been growing school gardens since 2013 and full-time since 2014. Most people you've seen doing this have been doing it as a side job, as a separate project, as, part-time. But this has been my bread and butter, my job, my passion, my life for over a decade, well over a decade. Has it been easy? Absolutely not. It has not been easy. It's not even easy right now. But I have stuck with this career path simply because I believe someone has to do it. I saw a huge gap in our education system, and I decided to do something about it. Our kids need to connect with good food and nature and learn how to grow their own food easily. And it needs to be done easily. And for that, it needs to be part of their education, embedded, just like math, language, arts, and science. Every child deserves a wholesome education, and without a school garden, they won't. School gardens are teaching tools that connect to math, science, language studies, social studies, geography, arts, and connect those subjects to nature, to food, to community, to the environment, to initiative, to collaboration, and ultimately to hope and empowerment. And if we accept that school gardens are teaching tools, we have to accept that they're to be utilized by the teachers. But what everybody gets wrong is that they think a school garden needs to be there first and then teachers utilize it. That's wrong, it's backwards and completely counterintuitive actually. I understand why everybody thinks that way though, because everything else in a school works like that. You can't teach cooking if you don't have a kitchen. You can't teach basketball if you don't have, a gym with a court and the net and the balls and all that. You can't perform a lot of science experiments that need microscopes without the physical microscopes. If you don't have the tools, the 3D printer, the softwares connecting to the machines, etc., you cannot do those science experiments. You cannot teach those things without the tools. But a school garden is to teach how to grow food. Designing, building, planting, maintenance, and harvest are all part of that learning. If you have a garden built and grown, you can't teach this skill in it. You need very few ingredients to start with and nothing fancy or expensive. And before you jump at me about the raised beds that you think you need and, the grow towers and the grow lights and the hydroponic systems, etc., let me stop you right there. No, you don't need none of that. All you need is seeds, potting soil, a sunny window, a few inexpensive cups and buckets and craft supplies. At least at the beginning, that's all you need. And you can grow an impressive food garden right in your classroom with that. And I mean it when I say impressive. Contrary to almost everything else, school gardens are taught into existence. Let me say that again. School gardens are taught into existence. Growing food starts with design, with choosing the right location for the garden, for example. If your students don't know where to place a garden, they don't know how to grow food. And it starts with seeds. If your garden is already grown, they won't learn how to grow it. Well, Yeah, Leila, when you put it like that, it makes sense. Well, yeah, school gardens are different than any other facility or lab or space that you've ever had experience with in a school. A library needs to be there with all the books in it to be usable. But an annual vegetable food garden that's already grown has very little use for a teacher. But Leila, what about the raised beds, the watering systems, the weeding and cleaning up tools, and the building tools, the shovels and gloves and wheelbarrows, etc. Will you believe me if I tell you that you don't need most of those things at all? And those things that you do need eventually, they don't need them at the beginning. I mean, if you don't believe someone who's been doing this successfully for over a decade full time, I don't know who you would believe. Those who grew school gardens unsuccessfully, those who grew it one season and got exhausted and, never ever want to do it again, those who pour tens of thousands of dollars into their school gardens and then were left with a huge project they couldn't afford to keep up. Believe me when I tell you, building the garden is not where you should start. Nor should you start with putting together a group of parent volunteers. Okay, Leila, where should I start then? You should start with seeds, potting soil, a sunny window, wherever in your school, somewhere in your school, a few buckets and seed starter cups, a planting schedule for your growing zone, and a lesson plan package. That would help you to grow a classroom garden filled with lots of food and food seedlings. And what will you do with those food seedlings at the end of the school year? Send them home. Donate them to, your local community garden. Sell them and raise funds for your school. The limit is your imagination at that point. That's what you need to start with. But I wanted an outdoor garden, Leila. That doesn't give me a school garden. Not yet, not this year, but it will give you the phase 1 of a school garden. I'll explain in a minute. Before I do that though, I want to clarify that I am talking to the teachers right now, because those are the people who are to be utilizing the school garden, indoors or outdoors, whichever one it is. If you're a parent, a principal, or anyone else for that matter, go find a teacher first. A teacher who wants to do this. That's where you should start. A school garden is only going to be successful if it's led by teachers while it connects to the curriculum, built and grown by the students' hands-on learning, and only supported by administrators, parents, and other members of the community. If you want to grow a community garden in the school's land, that's great, that's noble, but that's something else. That is not what this podcast is all about. We are talking about growing school gardens, educational gardens. Okay, now, teachers, let's get back to growing the school garden in 2 phases idea. Phase 1 is a classroom garden. To teach how to grow food, you need to start with seeds because food starts with seeds. At least all annual vegetables do, each and every year. And half of growing a vegetable garden is growing those seedlings, and the second half is growing them outside. Transplanting them outside in that garden that you have to, design and build and all that. There are 2 types of annual food plants to keep it very simply. Those that grow so fast that you could harvest them at the end of the school year right in your classroom and enjoy with your students if you sow them at the beginning of the spring at the right time. And those that take longer and at the end of the school year need to be transplanted into a garden or a bigger pot outside and yield in the fall around Thanksgiving time, which is the next school year. When you think about that, you'll realize growing a school garden is a very involved project and it needs 2 categories of skills. Category 1 is the collection of skills you need to grow seedlings, and the second category is the skills that you need to design, build, transplant, do summer maintenance and all of that for an outdoor garden. What I find works best for educators time and time again is when they focus on developing the first category of skills first, which includes lesson planning, teaching in that classroom garden, connecting the classroom garden to your curriculum, and of course, also growing those seedlings the first year. And then start planning and thinking about an outdoor garden for the second year or later. Because when you grow an annual vegetable garden outside, you'll need both category of skills. Your students will need to grow seedlings indoors and at the same time design, build, grow, and maintain a garden outside, plus arrange for summer maintenance and all that. This will be a lot all together in the first year when you've never ever done it before. That's why my programs come into phases. That's what I teach. That's what I teach in my School Gardens with Ease logistics class. And that's what I teach that's what I give you in the Oasis program suite of lesson plan packages. Speaking of the Oasis series, by the way, the doors for 2026 are now open and will close at the end of February. So you don't have a lot of time. If you want to have a complete lesson plan package done for you with student booklets and posters and step-by-step everything, to grow and teach in a classroom garden, you got to hurry up. The link to the Oasis program series is in the show notes, and the Oasis classroom is the one that covers phase 1. And many of you, after you do phase 1, which is a classroom garden, you'll fall so much in love with it that you might not even want to go further than that. And you might want to stick with growing a classroom garden every year with your new cohort of students forever. But in the Oasis program series, I have complete and comprehensive lesson plan packages, even if you want to do outdoor school gardens too, step by step, everything. Take a look and join ASAP. I will probably spend some time next week explaining each and every one of those programs inside the Oasis program suite in the next episode. But in the meantime, take a look at the link in the show notes and email me if you have any questions. Talk to you next week in another episode. You've listened to the entire episode, and for that, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please leave me a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And please share this episode with other teachers who might be interested in this topic. See you next week for a new episode.